You mentioned that in some cases where large molecule therapeutics have small patient populations, it's a different paradigm. When you introduce something like COVID and the appeal of antibodies to, the COVID pandemic, for instance, now all of a sudden, continuous has got a real strong value proposition. I use that as just a generic example because it's an easy one. So tell me about the why at a company like KKNA that's pretty big and has the capacity to do some pretty large volumes. Tell me about the potential why continuous from a business standpoint is something worth pursuing. Maybe some color on where the value can most likely be extracted.
Yeah, I think for me, the value can most probably be extracted when we think about products that are successful and how we're going to go forward. I think the consistency of the data, the consistency of the therapy, and then ultimately the speed to market in terms of being able to file more effectively a data set around the world, right? You're not then wrestling with regulator by regulator to gain market approval. You've got a data set which is pretty consistent. You've got your process is very well understood because it needs to be. So I think all those elements really allow for that business case to be more easily made, whether it's in a larger patient population or a smaller one. Frankly, speed to market is for me what it's mostly about.
All right, I'm going to ask some more specific questions here, and I want to remind the audience that you are invited to ask questions as well. We'll get to as many of them as we possibly can. But Paul, I'm going to throw this one out to you first, and Barrett, I welcome you to weigh in. As I noted earlier, KKNA has quite a diverse portfolio of small and large molecules. Are there any immediate or near-term applications that biopharma can borrow or co-opt from small molecule manufacturing to get on the path to continuous, or are they just such wildly different animals that it requires more of a reinvention on the bio side? Paul, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, my perspective, Matt, would be I think there are some learnings, maybe more generally applied. They would, without getting into the technical, specifics, I think they would have to do with what would be widely considered to be sort of process understanding, more direct feedback from a process variable perspective, and then the ability to, maintain process consistency. So those items, I think it's widely accepted that many of the bioprocessing items are more complicated than maybe some of the small molecule pieces that we have come to know and love over the years. But as Barrett pointed out earlier, I don't know that that's accurate. I think it's just we've spent more time in the small molecule space, so therefore we're kind of chasing from a process capability understanding perspective in the bio space. So I do think we'll get there, and the learnings are similar. They just need to be applied differently from a process and a product perspective.
Yeah, I completely agree there, Paul. I agree with Paul. I think, the first thing I think of it from the small molecule kind of world, as far as applications, I think control strategy, right? The ability to have real-time monitoring, dynamic feedback, and be able to adapt and change to process changes in real time. I think that's kind of, one thing that we can immediately borrow from the small molecule world to biologics. And then it also goes hand in hand with that extensive process knowledge. When you're building a huge data set, that builds expertise and knowledge, and you can actually see your true variation in your process. So I think that's one of the things for sure we can borrow right away.